Have you ever stopped in front of a mirror and found yourself startled by a single question? Who is the person staring back at me? On the surface, your life seems perfectly fine, with a steady job and a carefully mapped-out path that promises security. Yet beneath that appearance of stability, a quiet suffocation continues to tighten its grip on your mind night after night. You wake each morning with an empty soul, exhausted, realizing that you have been straining to perform a life that was never truly your own. The harder you force yourself to smile, the more you become a stranger, lost within your own world. Through the lens of Carl Jung's depth psychology, this deadlock is not a meaningless psychological crisis. When your soul has outgrown its former dimensions, while your mind remains trapped inside an outdated mold, your inner world will inevitably create fractures to shatter that confining shell. The crises you are enduring are, in truth, an alarm bell. The old version of yourself has exhausted its purpose for survival, and it must die. If you now find yourself standing at the threshold between the death of your old self and the birth of a new one, this video was created to walk with you through the storm. We will not dwell on superficial theories of healing. Instead, we will venture into the deepest and darkest corners of the psyche, learning to enter into dialogue with the unconscious to bring about a radical revolution of the soul. Stay with this journey until the very end, for the moment you find the courage to bid farewell to the person you once were is also the moment life's greatest privilege truly begins. The chance to return to yourself and live as who you truly are. Number 1. The crisis you are facing: the death of the old ego. Before you hastily label this stage a crisis, try looking at it through a different lens. What is collapsing may not be your life at all, but the psychological structure that has enabled you to survive for so many years. Carl Jung observed that the ego constantly strives to preserve a sense of stability by clinging to what is familiar, even after it has become painfully confining. So, when you wake up one morning and the work you once loved suddenly feels meaningless, the conversations that once filled you with enthusiasm now seem hollow, and the future that once appeared so clearly mapped out is suddenly shrouded in mist. Do not rush to conclude that you have lost your way. More often than not, what is disappearing is simply the version of yourself that once helped you survive, but no longer possesses the strength to lead you forward. Carl Jung once wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." Those words do not portray suffering as an unfortunate accident to be avoided. They present it as the inevitable gateway through which consciousness matures. The ego always believes itself to be the central authority governing one's entire life. It longs for everything to remain within the familiar order, because familiarity creates the illusion of safety. The unconscious, however, operates according to an entirely different law. Once your inner life has expanded beyond the limits of its old mold, the unconscious begins generating a series of collisions that leave the ego feeling as though it has lost all control. It is like a sailor desperately trying to steer a ship by an outdated map, while the currents of the entire ocean have long since changed course. That is why so many people enter this stage with an overwhelming sense of strangeness. They have not lost everything, yet nothing truly feels as though it belongs to them anymore. They still go to work. They continue fulfilling their responsibilities. They still smile during familiar conversations. Yet deep within, an unfamiliar feeling echoes through them, one that defies explanation. What unsettles them is not an external event, but the ever-widening distance between the life they are living and the person they are gradually becoming. The harder they try to return to their former selves, the more exhausted they become. The more desperately they attempt to perform the role they have always played, the more fiercely their inner world rebels. At this point, the battle is no longer between you and the world. It is between the old ego and the part of your soul that longs to be reborn. Look at Leo Tolstoy. After hitting the absolute peak of literary fame, he suddenly fell into a massive existential crisis. Everything he'd built, every value he held, just lost its spark. To the outside world, it looked like a breakdown. But from a psychological standpoint, his world wasn't ending. His ego was just getting too small for the man he was becoming. That rock bottom forced him to look deeper, ultimately rewriting the course of modern philosophy and literature. His genius didn't fail him. The old version of himself just had to break so the real one could step out. This image calls to mind a snake shedding its skin. The greatest pain does not come from abandoning the old skin itself, but from the period when that skin has become unbearably tight, while the new one has not yet fully formed. If it clings to the old shell, growth comes to a halt. If it accepts the process of shedding, vulnerability becomes the price of transformation. The old ego always interprets its own disintegration as catastrophe because it mistakes its existence for the entirety of the self. The unconscious, however, regards that disintegration as nothing more than a necessary rite of passage that clears the way for a greater level of consciousness to emerge. What causes your suffering is not the death of your life. It is the death of the familiar identity that once convinced you that you knew exactly who you were. For that reason, do not rush to repair your present condition as though it were a broken machine. Many people try to fill the emptiness with more work, more distractions, new relationships or new ambitions, hoping to restore the version of themselves that once functioned so effortlessly. Yet every attempt at patching things together is like rebuilding a house whose very foundation has already rotted away. Jung referred to this stage as psychic death, not to inspire fear, but to remind us that the end of the old ego always precedes the birth of a new consciousness. What appears to be a crisis is, in reality, the soul's silent rite of passage. Life is not punishing you. You are being compelled to leave behind the psychological form that has already fulfilled its purpose, so that you may enter a stage of growth the old version of yourself could never have reached. If you too can feel those invisible fractures forming within your own soul, do not hesitate to pause for a moment and leave your footprint in the comments below. This is more than an ordinary interaction. It is the moment you courageously acknowledge the presence of the inner alarm bell calling you to awaken. If you cannot yet find the words to express the chaos within, simply leave a single word that represents how you feel right now. It might be emptiness, shedding, or simply a silent period. Every line you write becomes a sacred resonance, a reminder that none of us walks alone on this journey of laying the old self to rest so that we may welcome a new dawn. Yet the death of one version of yourself never happens simply because you realize it has become outdated. What allows the old self to endure is not weak willpower, but the invisible roots that have been buried deep within the unconscious for years. As long as those roots remain intact, the old self will continue finding ways to resurrect itself in the most familiar forms. Number 2. Your old self survives through the unconscious patterns you call personality. How many times have you promised yourself that from this day forward you would no longer lose your temper, no longer allow a few words of criticism to wound you, no longer fall in love with the kind of person who once caused you so much pain? Yet the moment you encounter a familiar situation, every promise dissolves before you even realize it. Afterwards, you blame yourself for lacking strength, discipline, or determination. Carl Jung viewed this phenomenon from an entirely different perspective. He did not believe people fail because they possess weak willpower. Rather, he believed that willpower usually arrives too late. By the time you consciously decide to change, the old programs embedded within the unconscious have already responded. Imagine walking into a routine meeting at work. Your manager calmly suggests that your report could be improved by revising a few details. The room remains peaceful. Their voice is gentle. Not a single harsh criticism is spoken. Yet at that very moment, your chest suddenly tightens and an overwhelming wave of emotion crashes over you. Instantly, you feel rejected, diminished, and an inner voice declares with absolute certainty, "Everyone here thinks I'm incompetent." Later that evening, as you lie in bed, your manager's brief remark keeps replaying in your mind like a cassette tape stuck on endless repeat. Clearly, what is tormenting you is not the few words spoken during that afternoon meeting. It is a deeply buried wound within you that has suddenly been awakened. Carl Jung called these emotional centers complexes. Every complex is formed from an experience that was never fully processed. It quietly sinks into the unconscious, yet it never truly disappears. They are like seeds lying dormant beneath the earth, waiting patiently for the right conditions to sprout. A single sentence, a glance, a gesture, or even another person's silence can become the rain that awakens an entire landscape of forgotten memories. From that moment onward, the one reacting is no longer the mature adult you are today. It is the wounded psychological part of you that was hurt long ago but has never truly healed. Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Those words speak not only about destiny, but also expose the subtle way the unconscious governs your everyday choices. Many people believe they freely determine the course of their lives. Yet if you observe long enough, a disturbing pattern emerges. They continue falling in love with the same kind of person. They continue fearing the same things. They continue failing in the same ways. They continue responding to pressure with the same reactions. The scenery changes. The circumstances change. The people entering their lives change. Yet the inner script remains the same, as though someone keeps replaying the very same film. I remember Sarah, a viewer who once shared her story with this channel. She was a successful project manager who pushed herself relentlessly, believing she had to be perfect. Everything changed when she was promoted to CEO. Even as everyone celebrated her success, she was overwhelmed by a panic attack and became convinced she didn't deserve any of it. In therapy, she traced that feeling back to a childhood memory. At 8 years old, she proudly showed her father a test she had scored 9 out of 10 on. He barely looked at it before asking, "Why wasn't it a 10?" In that moment, Sarah realized she had spent her entire life chasing approval she could never fully earn. What is even more frightening is that after living with these automatic reactions for years, people begin giving them an elegant name. That's just who I am. That seemingly harmless sentence becomes the strongest wall, preventing any genuine transformation. Once you believe that you are naturally suspicious, naturally short-tempered, naturally weak, or naturally fearful, you no longer recognize these reactions as psychological phenomena that need to be brought into awareness. Instead, you mistake them for an unchangeable essence. The complex no longer merely directs your behavior from the shadows. It takes one step further by convincing its owner that it is the ego itself. From then on, every attempt to change becomes an unconscious effort to protect the very prison that confines you. The death of the old self does not begin by acquiring new skills or forcing yourself to think more positively. It begins the moment you become aware enough to question what you have always called your personality. Many of the reactions that convinced you they were your true nature are, in reality, only echoes reverberating from complexes that have never been brought into the light. Once you recognize this mechanism, you stop identifying yourself with the anger, fear, or shame that arises in different situations. You begin to step back and observe them, instead of being instantly swept away by them. That small distance opens the very first doorway to transformation. Only when these unconscious patterns lose their control does the old version of yourself truly lose the foundation that has sustained its existence. Then you begin to recognize a deeply painful paradox. Every time life opens the door to a new beginning, it is the old patterns that are the first to step across the threshold. Before the future even has a chance to take shape, the past has already quietly occupied its place. Life changes, yet the one looking at life remains the same. And so, the ending silently returns to where it has always belonged. Number 3. You cannot build a new life with an old way of thinking. Have you ever felt as though you were giving everything you had to change your life, only to find yourself returning to the very place where you began? You decide to take a new job, enter a new relationship, or move to a different city, hoping for a fresh start. Yet before long, the same pressures, the same familiar conflicts, and the same sense of emptiness quietly return. The ego instinctively blames circumstances, other people, or simple misfortune. From the perspective of psychology, however, this deadlock does not arise from the outside world. It arises because you are trying to create a new future through a lens of perception that has long outlived its purpose. To explain this phenomenon, Carl Jung introduced a classic psychological principle known as enantiodromia. Jung observed that when a belief system, a way of living, or a mode of thinking is maintained for so long that it becomes rigid, the flow of psychic energy within the unconscious naturally reverses direction. This reversal is not an accident. It is the mind's own mechanism of restoring balance. When your inner life has expanded, while your conscious mind stubbornly clings to old habits, the unconscious begins producing crises and repeated failures as a way of shattering the obsolete structure. It is sounding an unmistakable warning that your current mental framework is no longer capable of containing the greater life that is waiting to unfold. This psychological shift can be compared to someone stubbornly trying to navigate a modern smart city with the map of a small rural town. That map may once have been accurate. It may have guided them safely through the past, but now it has become completely useless. If you continue looking at the world through the same fear of being hurt, the same habit of guarding yourself, and the same negative responses to pressure, then every new experience becomes nothing more than a new set of pieces arranged upon an old chessboard. Your old way of thinking becomes a silent magnet, pulling every opportunity and every new relationship back into the tragic orbit of the past, leaving you trapped in a cycle from which there seems to be no escape. At its core, failure and crisis during this stage do not arise because you lack ability. They arise because your consciousness continues operating according to a structure that has already expired. Reflecting on humanity's resistance to this law of psychological evolution, Carl Jung once wrote, "We cannot change anything unless we accept it." As long as you deny reality, as long as you stubbornly insist that your old methods and your old ways of thinking are still correct, you remain imprisoned within the darkness of your own failure. Only when you accept that your current version has fulfilled its historical purpose and must now give way to something new can the true journey of transformation begin. Ethan was a software engineer who believed strict discipline was the secret to success. Every hour of his day was carefully planned, and that mindset helped him build a successful career. But after getting married and becoming a father, he tried to run his family the same way. He made detailed schedules for everything, from feeding the baby to household chores, and became frustrated whenever life disrupted his plans. Over time, the joy disappeared from their home. One rainy night, after another painful argument, his wife quietly took their child and left. Standing alone in the empty house, Ethan realized a painful truth. The discipline that had made him successful at work had become the very thing that destroyed the happiness of his family. What is required now is not the repair of scattered details, but a complete revolution in the way you perceive reality. You cannot expect a life filled with greater freedom and happiness while continuing to cling to the habits of blaming others, living in fear, and avoiding responsibility. You must find the courage to face your outdated assumptions, willingly release the core beliefs that no longer serve you, and make room for an entirely new system of thought to emerge. That is why the true turning point of transformation arrives the moment you stop fighting against external circumstances and begin changing the lens through which you see them. When you dare to surrender the authority of your old habits and willingly endure the uncertainty of learning to think from the beginning once again, you are allowing your old self to die completely. A new life can never emerge from old patterns. It begins only when you gather the courage to step beyond the familiar boundaries of your own psychology, equipping yourself with a broader, more flexible understanding of the world, and confidently writing an entirely new chapter of your life. Having the courage to shatter your old lens of perception and establish a new operating system for the mind always demands extraordinary bravery. If Carl Jung's philosophical insights and Ethan's story have given you even a small measure of strength to begin that revolution of consciousness, consider giving this video a like as a gesture of appreciation for your own awakening. Then share in the comments the lesson or quotation from this video that has touched you most deeply in this moment. Your small act of engagement not only helps these profound ideas reach more wandering souls who may be searching for direction, but also becomes a quiet declaration that you have chosen to abandon the old path and begin creating a freer future with your own hands. Yet if you continue following the trail of every fear, every habit, and every outdated way of thinking, they will all eventually lead you to the same destination. Not to a single traumatic event, not to one isolated memory, but to a person you quietly created long ago to adapt to the world. That version of yourself once protected you through countless years, yet today, it is the very thing standing between you and the person you were always capable of becoming. Number 4. The identity created for survival. What truly needs to die. No child enters this world intending to become someone else. In the earliest years of life, children laugh when they feel joy, cry when they are hurt, become angry when they are wounded, and delight in being loved. Yet as they grow older, many gradually discover an unspoken law of the world. Not every emotion is welcomed, and not every aspect of their true nature is worthy of acceptance. From that moment, a quiet process of adaptation begins. The child learns to be more obedient in order to avoid being scolded, learns to appear strong so as not to become a burden, learns to remain silent to preserve harmony, and learns to achieve success in order to earn recognition. What is born is not the authentic self, but an identity skillfully designed to survive within the expectations of the world. As the years pass, that identity grows alongside the person. It answers on your behalf in every conversation, determines how you behave in every relationship, and teaches you how to respond to every glance cast by another person. One individual smiles constantly despite feeling utterly exhausted inside. Another has never dared to say no for fear of disappointing others. Another spends an entire lifetime trying to prove their worth, yet never truly feels good enough. To everyone else, they appear kind, responsible, and resilient. Only the person wearing that identity understands what it feels like to sustain a performance for so long that they have forgotten what their original face ever looked like. Carl Jung called this psychological structure the persona, the social mask that enables human beings to adapt to the world. Yet Jung never argued that the persona itself was either good or bad. The problem begins only when people identify themselves completely with that mask. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. This famous statement is not a call to rebel against society. Rather, Jung reminds us that the greatest privilege of being alive lies in the journey of returning to our authentic nature after becoming mature enough to distinguish what genuinely belongs to us from the roles we once adopted simply to survive. Attachment theory in modern psychology has demonstrated that children naturally adjust their behavior to preserve their bond with their caregivers. Once a child realizes that love often comes with conditions, the brain quickly learns to prioritize behaviors that secure acceptance. Over time, those survival strategies become almost automatic responses. What once served as protection during childhood continues to shape the way a person loves, works, and understands themselves in adulthood. Much of what people believe to be their identity is, in reality, nothing more than the product of adaptation. Imagine a soldier returning home after a long war. The armor covering his body once saved his life countless times, protecting him from arrows and bullets and allowing him to survive at the edge of death. Yet when peace finally arrives, when everyone else has laid down their weapons and returned to the ordinary rhythm of life, he chooses to keep wearing it. That cold shell of iron makes every step heavier, prevents him from feeling the warmth of a loved one's embrace, and quietly turns him into a stranger within a peaceful world. What once protected him has now become the wall separating him from life itself. That is why so many people enter adulthood with an emptiness they cannot name. They fulfill every responsibility. They satisfy every expectation. They live according to the image others wish to see. Yet the longer they live that way, the more unfamiliar they become to themselves. This does not happen because they are weak or lacking in determination. It happens because an enormous amount of psychic energy has been devoted to maintaining an identity created solely for survival. When all of your strength is spent keeping the mask from slipping away, almost no space remains to hear the authentic voice rising from the depths of your own soul. Therefore, if you truly wish for the old self to die, the first thing that must be relinquished is neither your personality, nor your memories, nor your past. What must come to an end is the identity that once helped you survive, but no longer allows you to live authentically. Jung never encouraged people to abandon every role they play within society, because the persona remains an essential part of living among others. What he sought instead was for the mask to return to its rightful place, a tool for communication rather than a prison for the self. Once you no longer live in fear of rejection and no longer feel compelled to prove your worth in order to deserve love, the version of yourself that was created for survival will have fulfilled its final purpose. From that very moment, your authentic self finally has enough space to step into the light. Understanding this is only the beginning. A mask does not simply fall away because we have learned its name. The structures that protected us for so many years do not disappear at the command of reason alone. They come to an end only after they have been fully heard and understood. That is precisely why Jung did not stop at explaining the unconscious. He also pointed toward the path that allows us to enter into dialogue with it. Number 5. Practicing dialogue with the unconscious, laying the old self to rest. For an old version of yourself to truly die, reason alone is not enough. You cannot deny it, hate it, or force it into change through sheer willpower. The principles of depth psychology reveal that whatever you suppress or desperately try to destroy will only return with greater force, finding subtler ways to influence and control your life. Your old self is not an enemy that deserves punishment. It is a fragment of psychic energy trapped in the past, stubbornly holding its ground because it is still trying to protect you in the only way it once knew. It can let go only after its purpose has been fulfilled and after it has been met with the light of conscious awareness, understood with compassion, embraced, and finally released. To make this sacred process of transformation possible, Carl Jung left behind one of the most powerful practical methods anyone can undertake within their own inner world: active imagination, a direct and equal dialogue between the present ego and the deepest unconscious aspects of the psyche. This practice begins the moment you notice one of your old patterns suddenly erupting in everyday life. It may be an explosive burst of anger when someone offers criticism, a paralyzing fear that causes you to retreat from a great opportunity, or an overwhelming urge to escape into compulsive habits in order to avoid the pressures of the present moment. Instead of allowing yourself to be swept away by that emotional wave and unconsciously repeating the same old mistakes, consciously step back. Find a place of complete quiet. Close your eyes and gently direct your attention toward the part of your body where you feel the tension most intensely. Now try to separate yourself from the emotion by imagining that negative energy as a distinct character standing before you within your mind. It may appear as a frightened child trembling with fear, a scarred warrior carrying countless wounds, or a lonely dark figure consumed by anger. Giving the emotion a human form prepares the way for the next stage of the process. Begin speaking with this figure sincerely, patiently, and compassionately, as though you were sitting with a lifelong friend. Instead of judging or pushing it away, ask gentle questions from the deepest part of your heart. What are you trying to protect me from by appearing now? How long have you been carrying this fear? Are you tired of bearing this burden all these years? When you truly relax and allow yourself to listen to the answers that naturally arise from the unconscious, you may be astonished to discover that beneath the violence of your anger or the rigidity of your need for control, there has never been malice. There has only ever been the cry of a wound that was never healed, a version of yourself from the past forced to play the role of the villain simply because it knew no other way to protect you from pain. The moment that current of understanding is established is also the moment the defensive mask of your old self finally falls away, allowing the ritual of release and completion to unfold in its fullest form. Standing firmly as the mature person you are today, look deeply into that inner figure and offer both your gratitude and your blessing of freedom. Say to them, "Thank you for standing beside me and protecting me through all those storm-filled years. But now I have grown. I am safe. I have the strength to take responsibility for my own life. Your mission has been fulfilled with honor. Now it is time for you to rest and let go." When these words arise from a place of complete reconciliation, you may sense that figure smiling gently before gradually fading away, or transforming into a peaceful current of energy that quietly flows back into your heart. This ritual of laying the old self to rest leaves behind neither emptiness nor resentment. Instead, it brings a peaceful conclusion, releasing all the psychic energy that has remained imprisoned for so long, preparing you to welcome a life that is wider, freer, and more complete than before. After every sincere dialogue, there is always a very special silence. There is no longer resistance, no longer the need to defend yourself, no longer a version of you struggling to protect you from the past. And within that silence, which at first seems empty, something infinitely more precious begins to emerge. It is not a new person being created. It is the person who has always been there, finally given the chance to step out of the shadows. Number 6. The opportunity to return to your true self. This journey of returning rarely begins with gentle realizations. More often it begins with a profound emptiness when the goals that once guided your life suddenly lose all meaning. The moment your old self finally surrenders, a vast psychological stillness emerges, freeing you from the narrow definitions of success and failure imposed by others. For Carl Jung, this is the only truly fertile ground upon which the voice of the authentic self can finally be heard. Once you are no longer imprisoned by the expectations and fears of the past, the psychic energy that has remained blocked for so long naturally flows back toward your inner center, urging you to courageously seek the most fundamental answer to a single question. Who am I when I no longer have to live to please the world? Standing at this decisive turning point of self-realization, Carl Jung left behind a profound warning about the price of refusing to live authentically. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. To accept yourself completely is life's greatest privilege, yet it is also its most frightening challenge, because it requires the old version of yourself to die completely. Returning to your true self does not mean transforming yourself into a flawless ideal or an extraordinary figure set apart from everyone else. On the contrary, it is the courageous process of integrating both light and shadow, both your strengths and your deepest wounds, into one unified whole. As the old structure dissolves, you bring an end to the war of self-punishment and begin learning to embrace every dimension of your own soul. To understand the profound logic of this transformation, consider the life of Hermann Hesse, the great German-Swiss novelist. Before becoming one of the 20th century's most influential thinkers and a recipient of the Nobel Prize in Literature, Hesse experienced an existential crisis so profound that he sought help through depth psychology. The immense expectations imposed by his distinguished family and the public image attached to his early literary success became a suffocating cage that crushed the sensitive and deeply artistic soul within him. Only after allowing the old identities of the dutiful son and the writer for the public to completely collapse did Hesse truly reach the wellspring of the unconscious. The death of his former self liberated the most authentic Hermann Hesse, enabling him to create timeless masterpieces exploring humanity's search for the true self. This awakening can be compared to a rough gemstone finally being cleansed of the layers of mud that have covered it for decades. That layer of earth may once have protected the stone from the harshness of the outside world, yet it also concealed the unique brilliance that had always existed within. Many people cling to the false security of their old protective shell and, in doing so, resign themselves to living lives that are gray, diminished, and completely disconnected from their own souls. Allowing the old self to die is, in truth, the painful yet necessary process of polishing away outdated beliefs until the jewel is finally able to radiate its own singular light without requiring recognition or approval from the outside world. Ultimately, the greatest reward of laying the old self to rest is not found in new achievements or external success. It is found in a state of inner freedom. Once you are no longer living according to an old operating system driven by fear, you walk through life with a quiet steadiness that no external upheaval can shake. You understand that you no longer have to perform a role in anyone else's play, because you have become both the author and the central character of your own story. Smile as you bid farewell to the old self, for upon the ashes of everything that has fallen apart, your truest self is taking its very first steps with dignity, courage, and freedom. The death of the old self has never been a tragic ending. It is the quiet bow of winter making way for the first stirrings of spring. In the end, life itself is a succession of sacred ashes, where you are called to set fire to your old mask with your own hands, so that your authentic self may finally be set free. Do not fear the moment when your soul begins to crack, because it is through those very fractures that your most unique and radiant light finally finds its way into the world. If today's journey into the depths of the inner world has touched the hidden places within you, preserve this energy of transformation by subscribing to the channel and turning on notifications. Your continued presence is a courageous promise to yourself that you are ready to walk through every storm and embrace the ongoing journey of rebirth, both in this moment and in all the days to come.